Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. So in this video, I'm going to tell you how to prepare for the behavior or leadership interviews. So let's get started. So first of all, what is a behavior or leadership interview? So you may already have some good idea about what it is, just to give you a brief refresh of your mind about what it is. So behavioral leadership interview usually includes a couple behavioral leadership questions. So the general logic is to try to use your past behavior to predict your future behavior if you join the company or the team. So let's say, for example, some question maybe tell me about a time when you have conflict with your peers, or tell me about a time when you're on the minority part for a design choice. So something like that. So those type of the questions can be tricky sometimes, and also the more senior the position you're interviewing with, the more they will care about your performance during this part. So I would highly recommend you to take serious preparation about this part, because this can be the one of the most important part to decide your seniority about the position you're interviewing with. So the next question is how to prepare for this kind of interview. So although this can seem to be quite vague at the first glance, but there really is a pattern to prepare for this kind of interview. So different companies have different companies, different team have different job descriptions, and different companies can have different leadership principles, but more or less they are the same. So the general step to prepare the interview, the first one I would suggest you to do is, first of all, briefly go over the job description. So the first step is to go over the job description. So let's take an example for like a Amazon Senior SDE. So usually on the website, there should be a description listed there describing what the team is, what the position is, what is the job responsibility sometimes, and also what is the basic qualification, preferred qualification. So sometimes the position may require you to lead a team, like for example 6+ engineers. Sometimes you're just on the IC track. So different positions may have different job qualification. So I would recommend you to first go over the qualification before you start. If the job description is too vague, you can also talk with the hiring recruiter or the hiring manager about what they're really looking for this position. So after that, the next step is for you to take a look at the basic leadership principles for the company or for the team. So again, let's take a look at the Amazon leadership principles. So this is pretty long list, but essentially it has about 14 of the leadership principles. So take a look at the leadership principles, what each of them are about, and try to remember every of them. So you may ask why I need to go over those kind of the very big things, because that's what the basic job is. So the thing is, you still need to refresh your mind to actually try to remember what it is. So for example, sometimes a question might be asking you about your, for example, the backbones disagree and commit. Sometimes it may ask you about, for example, think big. So different perspective can be focused on different question can have different focus. So try to tell what the question is really what the question is really asking you. So what is the perspective they are trying to ask you about. So that will be like a major point for a question answering part. So that's the second part, which is to go over the leadership principles. And then after you do all of the jobs, the next part is for you to go over your past experience. So the next thing for you to do is try to have a review about the major projects or maybe the teams you you have led before. So this is about to try to refresh your mind about some projects you have worked on or the teams you have led before. So so that is because sometimes a project can be like years ago and you don't really remember that. So if it is like a too old project, I would suggest you to just skip it. So instead, you may want to try to prepare for the projects you recently work on. So if it is, for example, if it is a project like a very new project you just started, it may not be a very good example. Try to come up with some recent project you have finished and has enough scope to take care about the job description and the leadership principles. So you will use your best knowledge to tell whether the projects you are choosing to tell has a good scope or has a good match about the job description. So that's a part to prepare for your own scope or something like that. So the next part for you to do is to have a list of the projects and map to each job principle. So for each of the leadership principle, potentially there could be some questions to be asked. So for example, let's say have backbone, disagree, and commit. So maybe sometimes this kind of some questions can be asked for this perspective. Might be, so tell me about the time you have a disagreement with your manager about a design choice or about a roadmap. And also maybe sometimes asking you, what if you're on the minor part, like most of the teammates don't agree with your idea, and how do you proceed? So something like that. So if you have a hard time coming up with the example questions, you can try to refer to this Google Sheet. I summarized some example questions here. I'll include the link below. So it has some simple questions for asking about the basic leadership principles. So you may also want to try to categorize each of the questions into the corresponding leadership principles. So I would recommend for each of the leadership principle, you prepare at least 2 of the stories. So for example, let's say you have 5 projects in mind, and I would suggest for each of the leadership principle, you prepare 2 of the examples here. So for example, for here you have project 1, project 2, to answer some certain questions, some certain example leadership questions. And for here, you can use like the story you prepare for project 3 and project 4. So in this case, different interviewers who ask the leadership principle questions may not have like the same stories, and when they sit together to give you a review, so they have like a different stories in mind, and different descriptions about the different projects, and then it is going to give the hiring committee a bigger picture about what you did in the past, how you behave, and what is the scope of your project, like what is your leadership like. This is to tell your seniority, something like that. So that's a part for the preparation for each of the leadership principles. And then after that, I would suggest you to really do some practice on yourself. So try to think that some interviewer just sits in front of you and ask you some certain leadership questions you have already prepared. Try to make sure that you can answer the question within 3 or 4 minutes, and also give a clear picture about what the story is like. And also for the practice part and also for the preparation part, I would suggest you to use something called STAR mode. So STAR is something like, first of all, you start with the situation. So give a general context or the background of the project or the story you have, and then the next thing is to tell what is the task you're trying to finish. So for example, after giving a general background description about the project, then what is the task? What is the task you're going to take to finish this project? And then it is the action you actually did to lead this project, and then the final thing is the result. So sometimes maybe they will have some follow-up questions like what did you learn from this. You can also prepare for some follow-up questions as well. So during the practice, try to so I would say try to remember this. Try to remember the stories you actually came up. So that is because during the interview, if you have better memory about the stories you have prepared, then actually you can come up with a story quickly to answer the questions and save the time during the interview. And the last part is to do some mock interview. So if you have some friends from tech companies, try to have them try to ask them to give some help to help you prepare for the leadership or principal interview, leadership or behavior interviews. So if you don't have any friend, so I would recommend you to take a look at this website, which is called interviewing.io. So a lot of the engineers from Google, Facebook sit behind the scene to help you prepare for your interviews. So that's pretty much it, how to prepare for a behavior or the leadership interview. So first of all, let's go over this again. First of all, we will need to go through the job description to understand what the job is asking you to do, something like that. And then we need to go over the leadership principles for the company, and then review your major projects. Try to refresh your mind about what you did in the past, and then select a couple of the projects or a couple of the stories that you think can best represent yourself. And the next thing is to list the projects and try to map each of the project into the different job principles and come up with some examples under each example questions under each of the job principle. So kind of like have some mock question and answering stuff. And then the next thing is for you to practice. So during the practice, try to leverage the STAR model. So first of all, give a general description about the background, and then define the task and what you did and what is the final outcome. And the last thing is to do some mock interview with your friends or using interviewing.io or some other website you know about. So that's pretty much it for this video. If you find this video a bit helpful, please help subscribe to this channel. I'll see you next time. Good luck for your coming interview.